Эта поездка в Хартсдейл, благополучное и тихое местечко в 100 километрах от Нью-Йорка, была скорее результатом любопытства хозяев Масяси. Собаки полны сил и здоровья, делать здесь нечего. Это приют для тех, кто уже отошел в мир иной. Среди собаководов о этом месте только хорошо и больше ничего. Кладбище для домашних животных в Хартсдейле самое старое в Америке, а может быть и в мире. Хотя официально считается, что первый некрополь для домашних животных открыли парижане в 1899 году. Здесь, в 40 минутах езды на поезде от Нью-Йорка, первая могила появилась еще в 1896. Просто во Франции погост для животных открыли с разрешения мэрии, а в Америке по воле одного скромного ветеринара, да и то совершенно случайно.
Back in 1896, a veterinarian, Dr. Samuel Johnson, he was a state veterinarian as well as having his own practice. And back in 1896, when a woman lost her pet dog, she, at his office, I'm not sure whether the dog was euthanized or just died on its own, she asked Dr. Johnson, well, what happens to the body? And he said, well, really, we just dispose of the body. And she said, and he told her, well, you could take the pet yourself and bury them in your yard. Well, she lived in an apartment house. She realized that if she buried in a vacant lot, that Manhattan was changing so much then that in all likelihood, very soon there would be an apartment or office building built on top of her pet's grave. And she was extremely upset, and Dr. Johnson felt very badly, and he said, well, look, I have a summer retreat in Hartsdale, which was much more rural than it is now. And it's only about 35 or 40 minutes by train. And you can take your pet, go down to Grand Central and take your pet and go up to Hartsdale so you can walk. It's about 3/4 of a mile. And if you wish, just go onto my property, which was basically an apple orchard then. He lived in a house right here. He lived there on weekends. And he told her, feel free to bury your pet. And she took him up on it. And what happened then is she started telling her friends about it. And they called Dr. Johnson. And of course, he's being a very nice man, let them do it. And shortly after that, somebody did an article in a newspaper, and they're the ones that actually christened this the Hartsdale Canine Cemetery.
Эд Мартин – хранитель собачьего некрополя. Это дело завещал ему отец. Здесь же выросли его дети. Трое уже взрослых сыновей Мартина помогают ему с документами и клиентами. Дальний угол на кладбище – семейная усыпальница.
And this is those monuments there are for my mother and father and my mother-in-law and father-in-law, and that's for my last doggy that was here.
Но все-таки это не семейный бизнес. Хозяина у кладбища, в общем-то, нет. Чтобы исключить непредсказуемость человеческого фактора из списка угроз этой очень дорогой земле, ветеринар Джонсон завещал свой дачный участок трасту. Один из самых крупных американских банков не счел для себя мелким такой благородный почин и взял на баланс землю, которая до скончания времен предназначена для скончавшихся животных. Их здесь 70 тысяч.
The legal name of this corporation is the Canine Cemetery, and I think that's because at the turn of the century, the first pet that was buried here was a dog. And someone, I think a reporter, just wrote an article in the paper and christened it the Hartsdale Canine Cemetery. But in fact, our bylaws tell us that we are obliged, we're open to the public, and we are obliged to bury anybody's animal as long as the owner of that animal tells us this is a pet. We have buried other animals, such as rabbits and birds and guinea pigs and turtles. It certainly doesn't happen every day, and it's a small percentage, but we do. Back in 1914, a Hungarian princess came to the pet cemetery with a lion cub, and she went to the circus in Manhattan and saw a little lion cub in a cage and thought that was just horrible, as I do. But she thought it was not right. She fell in love with this little animal in the cage, and she took it back to her hotel, the Hotel Plaza, and unfortunately after a short while the animal became ill and passed on, and she had to wake for the animal in the Hotel Plaza and then brought the animal up here and has been here since 1914, the little lying gold fleck. This is the oldest monument that I can locate in the cemetery, and the only monument that is dedicated to a pet that was buried prior to 1900. So this is Dottie that has the oldest monument. There are pets that were buried in between 1896 and 1899, but either their monuments are lost or they never put up a monument, recalling once again that at that time, prior to 1900, folks just used to come here and bury on their own. This, by the way, is the largest monument that we have in the cemetery. This was erected in 1917. It has it's been sealed ever since. I think there are 7 pets that are buried inside that mausoleum. This is Mariah Carey's plot. It was put up to memorialize her pet cat, Clarence. She did not put Mariah Carey on, all she did was put M down the bottom of the plot.
Громкие имена на могильных плитах – главная достопримечательность любого кладбища. Но там, где покоится прах самых близких четвероногих существ, не приходит в голову искать мраморные VIP. Здесь каждый камень, каждый холмик кровоточит любовью. Маленький ангел, наша прекрасная бэйби, куколка, незабываемая любовь. Они любили, чтобы жить, они жили, чтобы любить. В эти строки веришь даже больше, чем в ритуальные эпитафии на человеческих могилах. В этих лицах видишь больше, чем может быть сказано сквозь слезы даже через несколько лет после потери.
I rescued my pet. His name is Taz, and he lived with me for 5 years. I have him buried here, and I try to come every other week to bring him flowers and let him know I still love him. There is a poem that says, when we meet over the bridge, and I pray that I do meet him because I miss him. I miss him more than if he was a child. When I took him, he was about 7 years old. He was a Maltese, and they had him living outside and just in the winter, summer, winter. He had lost most of his teeth. He was never really groomed or taken care of. So when I got him, the first thing they told me was, you have to take him to the vet, make sure he's okay. Then I took him to Petco to get him groomed, because then they gave me papers. The truth is, Taz followed me everywhere I went. If I was taking a shower, he would sit on the mat waiting for me. He would sit in the apartment in a position that he could follow wherever I was in the apartment. So I was very close with him. And when he got sick, it took me a long time to get over it. And even still, 2 years afterwards, I'm still feeling it.
Свежие цветы на могиле Теза, выцветшая игрушка на могиле Нидзя. Правила кладбища не ограничивают близких животного в знаках памяти и мемориальных традициях. Здесь читают молитвы всех конфессий и хранят до крайней степени потрепанности любимые погремушки домашних любимцев.
They can bring anybody they want with them. They can bring friends or children or anybody they want. They can bring a religious person if they wish. We have cards of religious people. They don't work for the cemetery. We don't get a commission or anything on it, but if someone wants a religious person, we have the cards of a few people who will come and perform a little service. We don't do the service. Our job, we think, is to let the pet owner do whatever they feel they are comfortable with in saying goodbye to their pet. We shut the door, but most folks will take a very short period of time. They may put a toy in the casket. They may have a child write a poem and put the poem in the casket. They may say a little prayer. or we have a book of animal poems that we will give them if they ask, and they can say a little poem. And we also want them and strongly encourage them to not only go down to the gravesite where the animal is going to be buried, but to stay there until the ground is filled in.
Несколько раз в день пасторальный воздух Хартсдейла омрачает дым крематория. Это значит, что в последний путь собаку провожают по-человечески. Недешево, но вопрос о цене в такие моменты неопределяющий.
The founders of the cemetery knew that this would be certainly more expensive than just disposing of their pet's body. On the other hand, they did not want to make this so that they would only be for rich people. They wanted as many people who wanted to do this. So those are the four costs: land, casket, labor, and maintenance. The maintenance can be paid one of two ways. It's up to them. They can pay what I consider to be a rather small annual fee directly to the cemetery, approximately $50 a year for the maintenance of that year, less than $5 a month. Or they can make a one-time payment which covers them forever. That money is sent down to the trustee, J.P. Morgan Chase. That's roughly $1,700. If we took the least expensive alternatives, the least expensive small lot, like for a cat or a small dog, the plywood casket, which is the least expensive, the labor to bury a small casket necessary for a cat, and if they started initially to pay for their maintenance annually, roughly $1,700.
Этот старик потерял единственную родную душу. Больше некому дремать у его больных ног и лизать морщинистую щеку по утрам теплым шершавым языком. Он теперь один, с домработницей и нянькой. И как в 80 с лишним пережить такое, знают только те, кто уже терял настоящих друзей.
I can perhaps give you an example. A long time ago, when I was a young man in the 70s and first came here, I was up here by myself on Sunday. There's no burials on Sunday that were just open for emergencies. And a gentleman came in who was probably my age now, and he had a deceased little pet with him, dog. And he came in and he had the dog. He took the train up. He wanted to bring the pet up himself, and he had the dog in a little box. And he said, "You know, I bet you think I'm crazy for burying this dog." And I said, "No, I don't." And I really meant it, I don't. He says, "Well, let me just tell you this." He said, "I have two adult children. One of them is in Italy with a boyfriend, and the other, my son, is in California with his third wife." And he said, "I very seldom hear from them. And when I do hear from them, it's by phone." And he said, "When I hear the phone and I hear their voice, I usually know what that phone call is about." And he went like this, which means they want a little money. And he said, "And you see this guy here?" He said, "This guy doesn't know where I went to school or if I went to school, what kind of car I drive, what kind of job I have, whether I'm bald or I have hair." He said, "And I've lost my wife a while ago." He said, "When I come home to the apartment and I open the door, that guy is there wagging his tail, happy to see me just for who I am. And I have a little cookie that I give this guy, or I used to give this guy, every day when I come home. And this dog would give his life for me, no questions asked."
Сегодня спутница семьи Мартин – сонная Нелли, смесь бассет-хаунда и питбуля. На кладбище она ходит как на работу, только сторож из нее никакой.
She sleeps with us just as she sleeps here. She's a very, very lazy dog. She needs her beauty sleep. So she sleeps quite a bit, more than any other dog I've ever had. Nellie was adopted by my youngest son, Brian, who works at the cemetery. And twice a year at the pet cemetery, we invite a wonderful group of people to the cemetery who perform a terrific service. They go to animal shelters in the area, and they take the animals from the shelter and bring them to the cemetery. Brian, my son, he saw Nellie and couldn't resist.
Кладбище для домашних животных, как ни странно, самое жизнеутверждающее место в округе. В День памяти всех собак здесь собирается несколько тысяч человек. Причем случайных и просто любопытных нет. Только те, кто прошел через испытание, которое Вальтер Скотт называл Божьим даром. Если человек так скорбит, прожив с другом несколько лет, что бы с ним стало, если бы собака жила бок о бок с человеком несколько десятилетий?
Your duties are many, you're sent and you're tracked. Your eyes tell me always, I've got your back.
Капитан К-9 команды полицейских кинологов чуть не плачет. Неуклюжие стихи – посвящение всем коллегам, которые вместо нашивок носят ошейники. Джон потерял 2 боевых товарищей с разницей в несколько лет. Надгробных плит на их могилах нет. Звездно-полосатые флажки у главного входа, как знак вечной памяти друга. Он говорит о них как о коллегах, о друзьях или даже братьях.
I have my first 2 partners are buried here at the base of this tree. My first dog's name was Tonto, which is translated to good friend. He had a tremendous career, found a number of missing people, children, adults, recovered a lot of evidence, a lot of firearms and knives that were used in the commissions of crimes. And great person. He probably prevented a lot of bad crimes from happening just by being there. My second partner's name was Spike. He was with me from about 1994 to about 1998. Same great career, great animal, did a lot of good for the public, a lot of much better things than I could ever think about doing.
С тех пор, как 45 служебных овчарок расстались с жизнью, спасая американцев из горящих башен-близнецов, эта церемония у памятника собакам, павшим смертью храбрых в Первую мировую войну, стала традицией. Общее построение, почетный караул, траурные венки и минута молчания. Этот вполне человеческий ритуал нужен не мертвым, он нужен живым.
I'd like us all to just take a few seconds of silence in remembrance of the animals and war dogs that have given the ultimate sacrifice and the humans that have helped them with that.
История этого памятника, самого большого в Хартсдейле, не намного короче самого кладбища. Могилу неизвестной собаки-солдата воздвигли всем миром. Деньги на камень и бронзовую скульптуру собирали по всей стране вернувшиеся с фронта. Многие из ветеранов были обязаны своей жизнью псам-санитарам. Под пулями и по трупам они пробирались к раненым на поле боя и приносили в медсанчасть каски тех, кто еще нуждался в помощи. С 20-х годов прошлого века количество ежегодно поминаемых подвигов служебных собак только росло.
I usually have a number of dogs working, and all of our dogs are very social. They have to be good around people. We work in areas where there's a tremendous amount of transit, people going back and forth, a lot of distractions. And we keep our dogs very social so that they can be around people. In our association, we have about 200 right now that are working. All different venues. They work for all police agencies, all in law enforcement, and they'll look for people, bad guys. They'll look for good people when they get lost and Alzheimer's patients. They'll look for contraband such as narcotics, explosives, all types of things that we may want to look for and take away from bad guys. Anytime we lose a dog, it's unfortunate. In the line of duty, we've only lost a few, thank God, where they've been killed while they're working. And we've been very fortunate. In the United States last year, I believe we lost about 45 dogs in the United States and 11 canine handlers at the same time. Locally here, we've been very fortunate. We haven't lost too many people in the past 10 years, and the animals have been pretty well protected, but occasionally we do lose someone, in the act.
Dogs were an important part of the military operation during World War I. And basically, there were many dogs that participated. They saved many lives and so forth and so on. And then, during the early part of the 20th century, in the 1920s, a memorial was built here, the War Dog Memorial, to honor all the dogs that have fought during wars, from World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, even today in Afghanistan and Iraq and so forth and so on, to honor those dogs. And what we've done, we've expanded it, not only to honor the war dogs, but to honor all working dogs, seeing eye dogs, dogs that help the police department, and any type of dogs that help humanity. And we take one day a year and honor them. And this has been a ritual that we've been doing for quite a few years now. What we also do on this special day is work with the Pet Adoption Alliance in Westchester, and there's so many pets out there, so many dogs out there that do need homes, and people, for whatever reason, don't keep their dogs. They turn them into the shelters and so forth and so on. And this organization we work with very, very closely to let them bring their dogs here and let the public, let the people know about this, that they can come see the dogs, pet the dogs.
В такой символический день у подножия собачьего погоста собираются не только двуногие. Жизнь собак в оранжевых жилетах вряд ли можно сравнить с годами благоденствия тех, кто смотрит с этих фотографий. Собачья жизнь ушедших и упокоившихся здесь была наполнена вниманием и любовью до самого последнего дня. Псы из приютов, которых добровольцы вывели погулять на кладбище, достойны лучшей доли. Сердобольные домохозяйки периодически занимают себя уходом за бездомными животными в специальных приемниках, выгуливают их и балуют лакомствами, а по выходным и вот таким дням устраивают смотрины в общественных местах, на площадях, в молах, в кинотеатрах, в больницах. Собачье кладбище, с их точки зрения, ничем не хуже.
It is a place where animal lovers come. You know that if you buried your pet at Hartsdale Pet Cemetery, you are an animal lover. And we don't have to ask much more than that when it comes to an adoption. Because if you love your pet that much, I know you're going to be a good home. You're going to provide a good home. So it's a great place for us to do it.
Adoption Day, день усыновления, устраивают на кладбище уже 8 лет подряд. За это время удалось отдать в хорошие руки больше 1000 собак. Безымянный терьер неопределенного вида сгорает от нетерпения. Уже несколько потенциальных владельцев пытались его погладить. Может быть, ему сегодня повезет.
This little guy, whose name is Comet, is 4 months old. He is a miniature Schnauzer mix, and he's looking for a good home. He came to the Mount Vernon Animal Shelter as a stray. Somebody just let the little guy go, and he was wandering the streets all by himself. So here he is today. He's a great little guy. He's got a lot of terrier energy, and we're hoping he's going to find a really, really good home.
Эвелин давно ходит на такие встречи, присматривает себе нового друга. Но новыми бывают только знакомые. Друзья по определению старые, так что пока никто не занял место в ее добром сердце.
But I would love to adopt another baby. My husband says no, now he's the baby. But I miss him.
Так случается. Люди десятилетиями возвращаются к любимым костям и не могут найти замену однажды случившейся любви. У смотрителя собачьего некрополя за долгую жизнь собак было много, но первая снится до сих пор.
The first pet that came into my life as an adult, where I and my wife had the responsibility, was a Cocker Spaniel. My dad found this beautiful, loving dog, a Cocker Spaniel, abandoned. This was a very special dog, but all of my dogs were special, but she was perhaps my heart is attached to her because she went blind later on in her life. She used to come up and sleep with us. She favored my wife so much more than me, but my wife still feels bad. Now the dog died in 1982 because Ophelia didn't come up with us that night, and now we know why, and my wife still feels bad that her last night was such a lonely thing. So they tear your heart out.
Это не верит в загробную жизнь. И реинкарнация человеку, чья работа связана с душами мертвых животных, конечно, чужда. Но все-таки...
Well, I am a believer in Nellie-type dogs who have been abandoned. And that's just my own choice, because I think that it's probably not a great life to live your whole entire life in a shelter.
Неллино счастье встретить таких хозяев, как Мортоны. Но вообще усыновить бродячую собаку в Америке очень просто. Нужно обратиться в ближайший шелтер, приют для собак, и оформить заказ. Рано или поздно в клетке появится необходимый экземпляр. Как воспитать в новом доме усыновленного пса? Об этом через неделю.